you're ready.
Okay, everyone. So I'll tell you first how I heard about Kirstin. Back last fall, James Casey couldn't do another Welcome Back Birds thing in Washington. Welcome Back Birds. It was a bird event that he'd like to do in the fall, and because of COVID, he couldn't do that. So instead, he had a stewardship roundtable, and Kirstin was one of the people who did a presentation at that. Now, I didn't attend the roundtable because I was COVID cautious, but I did manage to see her little video after and thought this would be a really interesting topic. And I will say up front here that Delta Naturalists Society did in the past, thanks to Joanne Williamson, who was our social lead, serve bird friendly coffee at all of our meetings and any events. And that Lorraine, who is our director and our social lead now, will certainly be serving bird friendly coffee at all of our meetings. And I'm actually looking forward to hearing where I can actually find bird friendly coffee, because right at the moment I'm not drinking it. I'm drinking something else, and it's going to be hard to give up, but I will make the change. As we all know, loss of habitat is really a major cause in the decline of not only birds, but other wildlife. And obviously cutting down trees for coffee farms it doesn't help the situation. So tonight's speaker is going to a program manager for Smithsonian Bird Friendly, which is the gold standard in biodiversity-friendly coffee. She'll explain to us how bird-friendly certification does more than any other certification to conserve habitat for birds and other wildlife on coffee farms. And as I say, I've seen at least part of her presentation, so I know she does a very, very good job. Kirstin is a conservationist at heart, an educator by training, with over a decade of experience working to engage audiences in the protection of wildlife and wild places. She does work alongside coffee companies to increase consumer awareness and support for bird-friendly coffee. And I'm going to be interested to know if she can talk coffee companies into actually getting certification, so that maybe I don't have to give up my coffee after all. Kirstin is a native of Philadelphia, but she's got smart and she's now living in Vancouver, or in Metro Vancouver area anyway. And she's working hard to increase the sale and support for bird-friendly coffee for Vancouverites, other people in British Columbia, and anywhere else. So I think that's probably all I have to say. You actually came to listen to Kirstin, so I'll turn it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that wonderful introduction. It is a pleasure to speak with you all today. And as I kind of get started here, I'm just going to start off by sharing my screen. If I could just get a quick thumbs up if folks can see that okay, if it's coming through okay on your end. Excellent, perfect, thank you. All right, so yeah, as Elizabeth mentioned, my name is Kirstin Hill. I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is the traditional territory of the Lenape people. And just a couple of years ago, my husband and I moved with our dog up to beautiful British Columbia, where we've lived ever since, and where we are fortunate to live and work on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to live and work and play in this beautiful corner of the world, and wish to acknowledge the many Coast Salish First Nations who have lived on this land since time immemorial. So as a settler and a newcomer to Canada, I'm grateful to the First Nations who have been long been stewards of this earth and continue to live on and care for the lands, waters, and life inhabiting this area. So as Elizabeth mentioned, in my professional capacity, I'm privileged to work on a project that holds great personal meaning to me. I'm the program manager for Smithsonian's Bird Friendly Coffee certification, which is what I'm going to kind of focus the remainder of my my time with you today on. So before I get started, I just wanted to get just a quick maybe show of hands of who has heard of bird-friendly coffee before? I know you were saying this has been served at your meetings in the past. So I'm seeing some folks, some hands going up as some familiarity with bird-friendly, some waving there. Excellent. Love to see that. So working with a kind of a bit of a group that knows a bit about bird friendly, which is always really nice and really great for me, is, you know, I don't have to necessarily start from scratch. But I did think it would be helpful just to start with a little bit of history and background on our program. So as I mentioned, we're part of the Smithsonian. We are a complex of 19 museums and the Smithsonian's National Zoo. Yes.
Any lady that I know.
Sorry, was there a question? Oh, no, sorry. I thought I heard someone say my name, so I wanted to stop there. But if you folks have questions throughout the chat, feel free to use the hand raise feature, and we'll try to kind of get to them as quick as we can. Yeah, so within the Smithsonian, we are 19 museums and the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, which is actually what houses our Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. And that makes us the largest museum and research complex in the world, which is pretty fantastic. We've got research projects in a number of different countries and have been around for 175 years now within Smithsonian. But within the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, our little corner of the world, we've been around since 1991. And our mission, we are dedicated to understanding, conserving, and championing the grand phenomenon of bird migration. And then, of course, we are home to the bird-friendly coffee certification program. So sometimes folks ask why birds, and we really like this quote as a way to kind of sum it up. So of all the biodiversity you could feature, why do you or think of, and why would you want to focus on birds? And we think that if you take care of birds, you take care of a lot of the big environmental problems in the world. And as we know, unfortunately, when we look at birds in particular, there are quite a number of problems that we're facing. So published in 2019, folks may have heard of the 3 billion birds study that came out that talked about the loss of 3 billion birds in North America since 1970, which is a really striking number to really think about. And that's just in the US and Canada, in North America there. And within that population of migratory birds, about 2.5 of that almost 3 billion birds are migratory species. So that's 2 in 5 Baltimore Orioles, and a really significant loss of almost a third of migratory bird populations since the 1970s. And when we think about what is driving this, one of the most significant drivers of this loss is habitat destruction. And when you think about habitat for migratory birds in particular, you're looking at a number of different places, right? So within the annual migration cycle, there are, your breeding grounds, which are going to be that area that you're seeing, that blue and purple now extending up into the United States, Canada, all the way up into Alaska as well. And then they're migrating down into this overwintering ground in Central and South America too. And then there's all of those stopover spots that are in between as well. So this has kind of been the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center's area of focus of trying to figure out, what's going on within habitat loss and within these migratory species, and how can we work to protect habitat for these animals that really truly need it. So kind of going back in history a little bit, a photo here is of Russ Greenberg, who's the founding director of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center and is one of the co-founders of the Smithsonian Bird Friendly Coffee Program, along with Robert Bryce. So even before the formal creation of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, Greenberg and other ornithologists were observing migratory birds in their overwintering grounds, so in those areas of Central and South America, and they were noting the types of birds, the species that were present, and what habitats that they were using. So pictured here is kind of a list of some of Greenberg's notes from 1987 on what he was observing and where. And one of the things that he kind of noticed is that the shaded areas of coffee farms we're providing this really high value habitat for migratory birds. So that's kind of how we stumbled our way into coffee. It wasn't necessarily that we kind of said, oh, coffee is really important, we definitely want to make sure we're working with coffee farmers and in coffee systems. It was that these were the areas that our scientists were showing were providing the most high value habitat for these migratory birds on their overwintering grounds. And it's not a surprise, because when you look at where coffee is grown and where biodiversity hotspots are, there's a pretty substantial amount of overlap here. So on this map, you'll see the biodiversity hotspots in orange, and then in yellow are those coffee growing regions. So that's where coffee is cultivated, which is actually on more than 27 million acres of land globally. So it's quite a lot of land used for cultivating coffee. And then a little bit of blue, that's a little bit of a teaser for us. So right now we just have the bird friendly coffee certification, but we're coming up with a cocoa certification that we hope will be launching later this year. So you'll see too, there's some good overlap there for where cocoa is grown and where those biodiversity hotspots are too. So when we think about coffee, historically, it was actually grown entirely in the shade. So it wasn't really until the 1970s, which if that number or that date or year is ringing a bell, think back to that 3 billion birds study as well. In the 1970s, farmers started removing trees and transitioning to sort of that more standard sun-grown monoculture, which resulted in higher yields, but also helped them because they were dealing with a coffee fungus at the time. And as they eliminated some of that tree coverage over their coffee crops, that was kind of helping to burn off that fungus. And then they kind of realized at the same time, oh, this allows me to produce more coffee per hectare and make more money in the long term. So what we saw between 1970s and today is about 3/4 of the world's coffee farms kind of losing that habitat and really leaving no place for birds, or worse, actively destroying forest habitat. And it's not just a problem for birds, but also for biodiversity overall, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So when you think about these two growing systems, I feel like I don't even need to say anything here. The photos kind of tell the story for us. So on the left-hand side there, you see the sun coffee monoculture. It's really kind of a more traditional growing system what we typically picture. It's actually not traditional. The traditional is on the right-hand side, ironically, but yeah, it's what we tend to think of when we think of like what a farm looks like. So very open, sort of just those rows of crops in the sun, and that's about it. Not a lot of space for birds and other wildlife to live in those areas and benefit from that. Whereas on the other side, on the right-hand side there, that shade-grown coffee agroforestry system, that almost looks like a forest. To me, before I started working in coffee and learning about this, I wouldn't have been able to tell you where the coffee was. So it's right in that understory there. So if you see those two side by side, you can kind of see the coffee growing right on the bottom here, but with lots and lots of shade cover over top. So it's kind of easy to tell that the number of bird species goes up significantly when you shift from that sun-grown monoculture to that shade-grown coffee agroforestry system. And so that is really why the Bird Friendly program was established. It was in order to protect birds, we need to protect this high-quality shade forest habitat on coffee farms. So that brings us to the Smithsonian Bird Friendly program. So who are we? Well, in the simplest terms, bird friendly coffee comes from farms that provide that really high quality shaded habitat for birds and other wildlife. So we are a third-party certification program. We're created by Smithsonian ornithologists with the goal of protecting wildlife habitat on coffee farms. We were created in the mid-1990s, so not long after the inception of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. So even though we're still a pretty small and niche certification, we've actually been around for about 25 years now. So we uphold the strictest environmental criteria currently on the market for wildlife habitat protection in farming systems. So what that means is that we're 100% shade grown, we're 100% certified organic, and 100% product pure, which means that every bean in a bag or cup of bird friendly certified coffee is grown in a way that's protecting habitat for birds and other wildlife. So we don't allow for any blending of any non-bird friendly beans when you find a coffee that has that bird friendly logo on it. We're also protecting over 1,700 hectares of critical habitat in 12 countries, which is pretty exciting for us as well. So how does the certification scheme work? Well, we certify at the farm level. So we have inspectors who go out onto bird-friendly farms. We work with inspection companies, rather, who go out to bird-friendly farms and they evaluate for certain criteria that make a coffee or would certify and verify that a coffee is grown in a way that's really leaving these high-quality habitats intact and in place. Farmers pay only to have their property inspected, and then once they receive that certification from that inspector, then they're good for 3 years. So they receive a 3-year certification, and any farm that's certified as bird friendly, as I mentioned, is also certified as organic as well. And then we get to our importers. So as we move through the supply chain, our farmers, they're producing the crop, obviously, and then they work with a network of importers, or sometimes they work directly with roasters as well to sell their coffee and to get it to consumers. So we have a network of bird-friendly importers as well, who are responsible for kind of bringing the coffee into our North American markets here. We also have markets in Japan and in Europe as well, where the coffee is brought into country. And then we have a community of roasters and retailers as well, who purchase that coffee, roast it, and sell it, get it out to consumers or out to other businesses where folks can buy it and drink it and enjoy it. So for us, the roasters, they do pay a small royalty, and that's what funds our research and kind of keeps our program running. And so but they're really the only ones who pay, throughout this supply chain. The importers have a 5-year agreement with a super low cost. It's $100 a year, which is hardly anything for these big coffee importers. And then the roasters, they pay the small royalty to kind of fund our program, keep us running. And then also they get lots of benefits for the use of that logo and certification as well. So things like marketing benefits, visibility, and lots of things like that. And then the inspectors, they certify for both mandatory and recommended criteria, which is what I want to share with us next. So one of the first things that we look for, absolute mandatory criteria, is shade canopy. So we look for shade cover of at least 40% after pruning season. So what that means is that if you were to look straight up in the air, at least 40% of what you're seeing under that bird-friendly crop is going to be kind of shaded and covered after farmers come in and do the pruning for the year. We also look for a canopy height of a minimum of 12 meters. So lots of nice big tall trees, not sort of just those smaller trees over the coffee growing plants. We also look for things like tree diversity. So we want at least 11 species of tree per farm, and we want a majority of these to be native as well. So at least 60% of the vegetation needs to be native in order for a farm to reach bird-friendly certification standards. We also look at other things within the habitat. So we look at things like structural diversity. So how many layers of canopy are actually over that bird-friendly crop, that coffee crop. We recommend at least a minimum of 3 layers of canopy within that. We also look and encourage our farmers to maintain things like stumps and snags, which can make for really good hiding places and habitat for birds, as well as epiphytes such as ferns, orchids, and bromeliads, which we know can provide good resources for birds while they are kind of bulking back up over that overwintering period. And then if there's a river or stream nearby, we encourage folks to maintain riparian buffers as well. And then, of course, as I mentioned previously, all of the farms also must be certified organic. So that means no artificial pesticides or fertilizers ever involved on there. And that is to ensure that there's lots of healthy habitat and then also healthy food sources as well. So we want to make sure that the farms are keeping those bugs that the birds love to eat, so they have something to eat, and that the bugs aren't laden with poison or anything like that as they come in and have bulk back up after that overwintering period. So that takes us to sort of where we are today and kind of how we've grown. So in 2021, so a snapshot of where we were, not quite today, but just a few months ago last year. So we've had steady growth of our program since its inception in the mid-1990s. As I mentioned, we had 17,000 hectares protected, and that's by a community of over 5,200 producers. And these folks are producing anywhere between 14 and 20 million pounds of bird-friendly coffee annually. So we're a little bit lower last year with about 14.6 million pounds of bird-friendly coffee produced, largely due to the pandemic, but that number has been kind of steadily increasing as our program has grown. And we're in 12 different countries, largely in Central and South America, where this coffee is being produced, but we also have coffee that's grown in Ethiopia, in Thailand, and in India as well. And we're always looking for new farms to certify throughout the world. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and just do a quick poll. If anyone cares to venture a guess, you can either unmute or use the chat feature. Oh yeah, I can see the chat. Okay, use the chat feature to put in your guess here. How many migratory birds, or how many bird species rather, do you think benefit from bird-friendly coffee? So I'd love to hear a guess from folks on what you might think that number would look like. Any guesses? There are no bad guesses. Ooh, 300. Joe says 300 species. Any other guesses? See some thinking happening. Ooh, 1,000. 500, 200. Great guesses, everyone. Yeah, this is really great. So what this stat I've learned since just a few weeks ago, and I've been repeating it nonstop ever since. Within bird-friendly coffee areas and the areas that are kind of adjacent to them, 1 in 10 bird species globally benefits from that, which I think is just an absolutely remarkable number. So 1 in 10 of every bird species on the planet benefits from the area protected on or near bird-friendly coffee farms, which I think is really fantastic. So bird-friendly coffee is not just better for birds, it's also better for wildlife and people as well. But when we think about this, what this actually means is bird-friendly farms can support over 4 times more birds than sun-grown monocultures. So just looking at our work in Peru, this is 243 bird species that are supported by bird-friendly shade-grown coffee farms. And when you compare that to partial shade, it's only 79 bird species. Sun-grown, it goes down to 61. So you can really kind of see that remarkable jump when we look at how the habitat is protecting and leaving this really important, valuable space for birds just in one country alone. So just in one kind of fieldwork site here, we have this significant jump between the sun-grown, the partial shade, and the bird-friendly shade-grown area. But as I said, it's not just birds, it's other wildlife and people as well who are benefiting from bird-friendly farming practices. So bird-friendly has been proven to provide important habitat for amphibians and small mammals, as well as both resident and migratory birds. And it's also a really good, climate positive coffee option that's out there. So when you think about climate resiliency, so bird-friendly farms tend to be more climate resilient because that shade cover is protecting the crops from extremes, whether it's extreme rain, extreme heat events, things like that. So your coffee is more likely to maintain and still actually taste quite good after those climate extreme events happening, which are unfortunately happening more and more, as we know very well here in this corner of the world here in BC. And it's also creating a really nice carbon sink too. So by maintaining lots of trees, those areas on the bird-friendly farm, it's capturing that carbon from out into the atmosphere and bringing it, drawing it back down into the soil. So not only is it more climate resilient, but it's also better for combating climate change as well and helping to sequester carbon there. Within keeping those forested systems and those things like the, all the different trees and plants and epiphytes, all those things that we're keeping within these bird-friendly farms, it's also helping to increase soil fertility and moisture as well, which is really helpful. And it can help farmers earn more money. So many of the trees that are planted within these bird-friendly farms to provide that shade, they're also things like fruit producing trees. So they produce things like banana or avocado or papaya that can also be harvested and sold out into market, giving farmers a secondary source of income beyond their coffee. They also make for really great ecotourism spaces and farms to visit. And several of our farmers have really nice ecotourism benefits as well. And then, of course, you're getting all of the really wonderful ecosystem services that are provided by birds as well. So we know that birds can be really excellent pollinators. They help with seed dispersal. They're helping, of course, with pest control, so insect control, rodent control. And actually, a study of insect pest control in Jamaica showed that birds boosted farmer income by $75 to $310 per hectare because they were really working to reduce coffee berry borer infestation and damage. So coffee berry borer is like probably the #1 pest for farmers right now that they're dealing with. But if you have a robust bird population on your farm, then the birds are doing the work for you. You don't have to use pesticides. You don't have to, figure out how else you're going to eliminate the coffee berry borers. You can let the birds go ahead and just kind of snack on them all day long, and they do the work for you, which is really great. So in Jamaica, these 3 migratory species in particular comprised about 50% of detections and predation on coffee berry borers. So the prairie warbler, black-throated blue warbler, and American redstart, they really help farmers with these coffee berry borer infestations, which are a major threat to coffee production. And these species, and notably, are only present if shade trees are present as well. So I'm going to do another quick poll for us here, partially to see how folks are doing, and hopefully you can see the value of maintaining forest-like habitat on coffee farms. But one of the most frequently asked questions that we get is, isn't it enough to just drink shade-grown coffee? So to see if folks are paying attention to here, is shade-grown coffee the same as bird-friendly coffee? And you can use either your icons in the chat, do thumbs up or thumbs down. You can just kind of type into the chat if you'd like, and enter what you think. Is bird-friendly coffee the same as shade-grown coffee? Ooh, okay, so we're getting some no's in. Not the same, not the same. Ooh, Joanna's saying yes. Couple of mixed opinions. Almost, I like that answer. Yes, no, so a little bit of a mixed bag in here. Appreciate the participation in the kind of impromptu polls there. So when we think about shade-grown coffee, I like that answer of almost, because in a sense it is, but it's not quite all the way. So when you think about shade grown, that's kind of on the bottom of this chart here that we have. So shade grown is actually a pretty generic term. And unfortunately, it's becoming a little bit of a greenwash term. So some companies are kind of using it to describe a product that they have, but there's really no set definition, no set regulation for what it means for something to be shade grown. So since it's not regulated, what that means is that some farms can provide some habitat for birds and other wildlife, but there's no guarantee that's in place. And so what we kind of hang our hat on within the Bird Friendly program is we are the guarantee. We take the guesswork out of it for you. If you see that Bird Friendly logo up in the kind of the upper left-hand corner here, you know that coffee is coming from a farm that provides really high quality shade. So we're strictly regulated. We talked all about the different things that go into a farm being able to call itself bird friendly. And then also when you look at things like pesticide regulation and how that goes, we are kind of the elite. And that's, as Elizabeth was saying when she introduced me, the kind of that gold standard in biodiversity friendly coffee. That's who we are. That's what we hang our hat on. And there's other certifications that are out there too. Folks may be familiar with Rainforest Alliance, Fair Trade, Organic, of course, as well. And these kind of all these 3 in the middle here, they're all different types of certifications that provide value, but they're not the same as bird friendly. So Rainforest Alliance, they have some optional things in there for shade coverage. They allow limited pesticides, so they can be better for wildlife. But when you think about the grade of good, better, best, they're better, but they're not quite the best. They don't quite look at shade habitat and habitat protection and biodiversity conservation quite in the same light as the Bird Friendly program does. And while Fair Trade and Organic both do excellent things in their own spheres, they don't really look at shade coverage at all. So if a product is organic, we know that for sure it's got no synthetic pesticides or fertilizers, strictly regulated. And of course, biodiversity is benefiting from that. But there's there's really no habitat requirements in place. And the same goes for fair trade, where we know that there are some optional things around pesticide use, fertilizer use, but shade coverage, it's really just not regulated. It's not something they focus on. And so when you see the fair trade, you know that that's good for farmers, which is really important, of course, but not really doing anything for biodiversity conservation there. So despite the obvious benefits to biodiversity, to farmers, to climate, our certification remains relatively niche. So even in areas and spheres where you would think that folks would of course be drinking bird friendly, they would know all about us and be great advocates for us, we're still relatively unknown. We're still pretty tiny. We still get kind of that mixed hand raise of like, I think I've heard of you before, but maybe I'm not quite 100% who you are and kind of what you're doing here. So our program has certainly grown over the years, but unfortunately supply currently exceeds demand. So what that means is that oversupply presents a risk to the habitat that it's currently protecting. So if farmers aren't finding buyers for their bird-friendly coffee, if it's just getting lumped into the coffee commodity market and just being sold as, you know, regular coffee, and they're not really seeing that return on that investment, then they might leave the program and they might change their farming systems. They might eliminate their habitat or get out of coffee completely and sell their land to go, you know, to the highest bidder. So what we're trying to do now is we understand that that's a gap we definitely have to fill. And so part of my job as program manager is to help to work to overcome that. So what our program has identified is that the biggest barriers to folks drinking bird friendly and making the switch to bird friendly is they're largely unaware that we exist, for one, so they've never even heard of us. For two, there's a little bit of confusion around what bird friendly means. There was one of my colleagues actually had someone that she was speaking with who was like, so is it coffee you feed to your birds? Do birds drink coffee? Is that how that works? And we're like, oh, no. Okay, so we got to start from square one sometimes and let folks know who we are and what we're doing. And then product availability. So as Elizabeth mentioned a little bit in the introduction is, you know, it can be sometimes difficult to find bird friendly or know what is or is not actually bird friendly certified coffee. And so what we're trying to do is raise awareness to increase the amount of knowledge that folks have around what it means for coffee to be bird friendly and why that's important. And then also to make it easier to buy bird friendly coffee as well. And a lot of the research that we're doing has been happening within the zoo and aquarium world with a lot of folks who are conscious consumers. They care about the environment. They are, folks who really value these types of products that do good things for biodiversity. And that's kind of framing some of our decisions and our paths forward as we try to figure out how to really better engage these communities like yourselves who care a whole heck of a lot about wildlife. And some of the things that we're finding I wanted to share because I find them to be really interesting. So we did a survey of over 1,500 zoo and aquarium supporters, largely in North America, but we did have responses come in from around the world. And what we found was actually really heartening. So the good news is that after learning just a tiny little bit about the certification and taking a look at that bird-friendly seal, the bird-friendly certification positively impacted 86% of those who were surveyed. So 86% of folks said that they would look for bird friendly the next time they were shopping for coffee after they learned just like 3 sentences of information about us. And then in addition to that, 88% wanted to see bird friendly coffee sold at their zoo or aquarium. So for us, that's a really nice selling point to the zoo and aquarium community to say, hey, if you stock this on your shelves, if you help us to increase that demand, your consumers are saying they're interested. Nearly 9 out of 10 folks want to come and buy bird friendly coffee from you. And it's not just that, they're also willing to pay more for bird-friendly coffee. So we found that within this study that folks were willing to pay $2.17 more per pound of bird-friendly in order to have a coffee that was certified as bird-friendly compared to what they were currently paying, and then $1.07 more per cup in order to have that bird friendly and feel good about that coffee that they were purchasing. And this kind of seems like a pretty high number of what folks are willing to pay more. We were thinking, oh, it might just be, maybe a few cents more or, 10 cents, 25 cents. But was actually corroborated by data that was collected by Cornell, except their number was even higher. So $2.18 more per pound is what folks are willing to pay coming out of that Cornell study. So we know that there's an appetite there. We know that there's a market there. And so what we did with this information was create a series of resources for folks to use to really kind of get the word out on bird friendly and to help assist in a transition at an institutional or organizational level to bird friendly certified coffee. So this research, and combined with some other research that we did with zoo and aquarium professionals, informed the development of 5 new toolkits that contain a total of 30 resources, which were designed to help conservation organizations support bird friendly coffee and help them along that journey from where they are now, which might be like, I kind of maybe know a little bit about you, or maybe I'm just learning about you for the first time, all the way through to I'm championing the drink bird friendly message. We're selling bird friendly coffee at our facility and serving it to our visitors, to our guests. And that's kind of, a little bit of everything in these resources here. So they're written through the lens of a zoo or aquarium facility, because transparently, that's who funded our research and our ability to create these resources. But the messaging, tactics, and resources that are inside there can be adapted for use by any NGO or any group who's interested in supporting bird friendly. And each toolkit is designed to meet these needs of organizations at different points along their journey to support bird friendly. So we've got the essential toolkit, which is kind of your starter guide. These were the most frequently requested resources from folks who said, hey, like, here's the bare minimum of what I need to know in order to feel like I can at least talk about bird friendly or introduce this conversation to my facility, to my organization. Then we have instigating institutional change, which is more about how do I have this conversation with my leadership? So within my company, my organization, I want to talk to them about bird friendly. How do I start that? What information do I want to share? So we have info in there on that. And then that kind of works in hand with this leader's guide for bird friendly. So we created this one for the folks who are at that decision-making level. So we talked to zoo directors, to vice presidents, to heads of departments, and said, hey, what are those things that you need to know that would help you understand why this is something that you might want to support or bring into your organization? So we included things like a lot of those stats and metrics about the support for bird friendly, about the benefits to conservation, about stories of success from other institutions who have made the switch and what that looks like for them. And then our last two, these are kind of like the bulkier, meatier ones. These are more like operational how-to guides. So our retail operations, so this is kind of a step-by-step guide on how to begin selling and serving bird-friendly coffee at an organization or an institution. So starting with sort of like, how do we even identify what coffee is and is not bird friendly, all the way through to databases, contact lists for how to find and buy bird friendly coffee, and then how to really set up a display at your institution that will, really help maximize it and really capture folks, bring them in and tell that bird friendly story. And then lastly is our education and outreach toolkit. So this is all about supporting that drink bird friendly message. And this one is really nice. And I like probably the most, not just because I'm an educator at heart, but because it's something that everyone can do. So even if your organization or institution or what have you isn't ready to make a switch to bird friendly coffee, you can always support that drink bird friendly message. So, and you can model it through your individual behavior as well. So this one has lots of different things like ways to support through events like World Migratory Bird Day, which we know is coming up, through things like messaging that can be shared with volunteers, and ways to go out and engage folks in your community and encourage them to be part of the solution through drinking bird friendly, choosing bird friendly, and that's a really nice suite of resources that really can be used by anyone. So again, although these toolkits are created with the zoo and aquarium audience in mind, we have these available really for any group, including yourselves who are interested in using them. And I can throw a link in the chat once I kind of close out my slides here so you can get a chance to see them. I also want to acknowledge I see a couple of questions coming in. So where can we buy it? I love that you guys are ready to jump on board and buy. And that's one of the next things we're going to be talking about is sort of making the switch. So how do you buy bird friendly coffee? How do you actually get this product? So locally here in BC, we have one roaster who is fairly new into the program. He is out of Ladner, so not too far from where where you folks are if you're largely in the Delta area. His coffee company is called K Offe, so I'm going to put that in the chat. That is how he spells it, K-OFF-EH, and he is selling bird friendly certified coffee and doing local deliveries. He's at farmers markets. I'm not quite sure if he's actually kind of on retail shelves just yet, but if you're local to the area, and I can vouch for his coffee, it's really tasty. He sent me a couple samples to try, so would definitely recommend if you're interested in supporting local and buying bird friendly, look for K Offe. His name and the gentleman's name is Kent. He's a great guy, fairly new to the program, but definitely a good local source for bird friendly here. If you're interested in trying a variety of different bird friendly coffees, or if you're just kind of curious to see what's out there, I recommend you visit drinkbirdfriendly.com, which is a shortcut URL, which will take you to the page on the Bird Friendly website, where you can see and explore different options for buying bird friendly coffees. So many of our coffee companies sell online. So if you're interested, you can buy direct to them through their website. Some folks also even stock on Amazon. So if you're an Amazon buyer, you can go that way. I know that's not for everybody, but if that is where you purchase some of your goods, you can buy bird friendly coffee through those channels as well. And then locally, we can also be found in Whole Foods stores. We're found in many palm markets, and actually at Wild Birds Unlimited, at both of their Vancouver locations, they stock a bird friendly certified coffee as well. So lots of different spaces for you to purchase your bird friendly coffee if you are interested. And then one of the other things that we can do, which Elizabeth touches a little bit on, one of the things that you were mentioning, is actually recruiting new folks to join the program. So if you have a coffee that you love and you think they should be bird friendly certified, send them to me. Tell them that you think that this is really important to you, that you want to make sure that the coffee that you're buying is grown in a way that's supporting birds and other wildlife. We're always onboarding new folks into the program. And so you can make that request to your favorite coffee company to say, hey, we would really love it if you would be able to support the bird friendly program. All it means for them is sourcing their beans from bird friendly certified farms, entering into a licensing agreement with Smithsonian, which basically says that they won't blend it with anything that's non-certified and then try to pass it off as bird friendly certified. And then of course there is that royalty fee that is in place. That's a small, it's 10 cents per pound on green coffee purchase that then goes on to be marketed and sold as bird friendly. And that is kind of what fuels and funds our program. So those are, both really good ways for you to kind of individually get involved and to kind of become engaged with bird friendly. And then of course, anything that we can do to help spread the word. So as you're talking to your friends, your community, you are a better mouthpiece than I am. I appreciate and love the fact that we have so many folks in attendance with the meeting tonight, but you will be better stewards to the bird friendly program than I could ever be, because we know that trusted word of mouth means the most when it comes from the folks that are already in our circles and already our friends and our family members, our community members, things like that, versus the talking head on the screen who is just really excited about coffee. So if you're keen on doing that, I definitely encourage you to check out our bird friendly toolkits, where we have lots of information and ways to kind of engage and have conversations with folks, including letter templates for your favorite coffee roasters, where you can kind of say, hey, I would really appreciate it if you would switch. We've got letters in there that you could just kind of take, copy, paste, enter in your own information and send off to your favorite coffee companies. So lots of different ways to kind of get involved and engaged there. So as we kind of wrap up and start to kind of close out our talk here, and I know there's a couple other questions in the chat, which I do promise I will get to. So I like to kind of close with this slide. So this is Asabagri Farm, which is in Guatemala, and one of the things that that I really love to think about, especially this time of year, as we're starting to see a lot of the migratory birds coming back, into our neck of the woods. They're arriving back. We're hearing the songs. We're seeing them while we go out on hikes and walks and appreciating nature. And the coffee that we sip each morning, or for me, throughout the day, it can provide a space to rest and recover after migration for some of these very birds that we're seeing that are returning to our necks of the woods here. So pictured here on the left is the ruby-crowned kinglet. It's found throughout the United States and Canada during the warm weather months. In the center here, we have the olive-sided flycatcher. That's a near threatened flycatcher that can be spotted perching on high bare perches. It has kind of that unique upright posture as seen in the photo there. And then the Wilson's warbler all the way on the right-hand side there. So they're small warblers with black caps on the males that you might see in this area. And these are, just a few of the birds that provide that utilize bird-friendly habitat while they're overwintering, and then are kind of making their way back up into Canada and into our neck of the woods this time of year. So the coffee that we're choosing affects these birds that we're seeing return, into our areas here. They're coming from bird-friendly farms like the Asobagri farm in Guatemala. And as we purchase our coffee here, we're supporting the farmers who are protecting this habitat for these birds and so many others. They're providing that really critically important spot to rest and recover after that migration south, and then allowing these birds to return, not just the species, but these individual birds who are outside of our windows and in our parks for us to be here and enjoy. And I think that's really special. And that's one of the reasons why I love this program so much. So with that, I just want to say thank you all. It's been a pleasure to chat with you this evening. I'm happy to answer those remaining questions that are in there. And if anyone else has questions, feel free to either add them into the chat here, or if you want to kind of raise your hand or unmute. I'm not sure how you usually do questions, but I'm happy to take any questions folks may have. And maybe we can even start with, some of the ones I didn't get a chance to answer as we were talking through our chat here. Yeah. So Elizabeth, does it make sense to start with the ones in the chat, or do you typically do questions another way?
Yeah, we normally do our questions through the chat first, and then see if anyone else has other questions.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll get the last one first here. Grant Edwards is asking, is the world of tea on the horizon for being bird friendly?
That's a great question. So there are so many different ways to create bird-friendly habitat in different types of systems. So one of them, of course, we started with coffee. Our next venture is going to be cocoa, as I mentioned. So that's coming out in 2022. And then also on the horizon is like possible next things are rice and wine. So when you think about like all the products in the world and the types of things that we as consumers tend to buy, if we've got rice, cocoa, coffee, and wine covered, pretty much everyone is consuming at least one of those four things, right? So we've got a pretty nice market base covered there. But there's also talk of a bird-friendly beef, which is a really interesting one. We're not involved with that right now, but Audubon Society is kind of looking into that and what that might mean, and lots of other different products that are out there. So I don't want to rule anything out, but I would also say that right now you are talking to 1/3 of Team Bird Friendly. So we're a pretty small shop, a pretty small operation. So in order for us to kind of continue on our grand plans of world domination, we're going to have to get a bit bigger, I think, first.
Okay, I see. Actually, I'll go back to the top here. I think you answered some of the questions already. Okay, Carol saying, I do not know of any place to buy bird-friendly coffee. Are you taking any steps? Now, Carol lives in Richmond. Taking any steps towards trying to get them into regular supermarkets or other easily accessible places. Now, I think Kirstin did say that Whole Foods has them. Do you have a Whole Foods handy, Carol? No? So do you know of any place in Richmond?
I will have to do some looking on the map. I live in Port Moody, so I'm a bit far away from Richmond. And as I mentioned early on, I'm a newcomer, so I'm still getting to know each of the different areas of the Greater Vancouver area. But I'll have to do some looking and see if there are any shops that I'm aware of in the Richmond area that would have bird friendly. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can certainly do a quick look and see if we have any folks that are in that neck of the woods. But really, my job is to support our roaster and retailer community, and then they can kind of make the decision that's best for their business about whether they want to try to sell online or within supermarkets, within natural food stores, within other areas, things like that. And for each of them, that decision is, one that they weigh the pros and cons of, and for each one is going to look a little bit different. So to be stocked in like a regular supermarket, like a Thrifty or something like that, or even like a Walmart, it requires a different set of criteria than to sell in some of these other channels. So there's things like shelf life that has to be in place, different things or measurements in place there. The SKUs have to be different, like those little barcodes, the requirements to pay for the shelf space and how they get that return back, and what that looks like for them. So number of the folks that I've talked to within our program are a little hesitant to go into grocery stores and supermarkets until they get a little bit bigger. They're kind of looking at the kind of that middle ground there. So working with folks like Wild Birds Unlimited and some of the natural food stores where, it's a little bit smaller scale. So the requirements are a bit easier on the folks who are roasting and selling the coffee and making their living that way. If you have a Palm natural food store, that's one where I've had some luck in the past in my neck of the woods over in Coquitlam. There's bird friendly pretty regularly stocked in Palm if you have one of those nearby.
We don't have any of those nature stores of in Richmond that I'm aware of, but Ladner's not that far away, but it's less accessible, that's all.
Yeah. So probably buying online is a good option for a lot of people.
Yeah. Online is definitely going to give you the most options right now with where our program is and how big we are. Our goal is, of course, to make bird friendly as accessible as like a Starbucks would be. Our white whale, if you will. If we can get them bird friendly, then we're in excellent shape. But that's going to take a lot of time and a lot more coffee beans, I think, than what we currently have in our supply chain. But yeah, I would love to have bird friendly be as easy to find as Tim Hortons or Starbucks or anything like that, but we have got a little bit of work to do before we're there.
Yeah, so that website is drink bird friendly coffee, or just drinkbirdfriendly.com.
Right, just drinkbirdfriendly.com. I can put it in the chat so you can just click on it to get there.
Just a question. I just returned from one of those eco-friendly coffee farms in Guatemala, and they sort of indicated that was really the only way to grow coffee. And everything we saw there was very shade coffee. I don't know how much of that would actually be bird friendly coffee, but it certainly had lots of birds and lots of shade. So that it looked like they were doing it at least partially the right way. They didn't talk anything about bird friendly or anything like that in any of the tour we were on. They just sort of showed us how they made it and how they grew it and all that kind of good stuff. But I was wondering, is the coffee that they grow in without shade the same type of coffee, or is it a totally different type of strain of coffee?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's two kind of dominant types of coffee that are on the market. There's Arabica and there's Robusta. Arabica tends to be like a higher grade of coffee. So it's all specialty coffee is Arabica, comes from Arabica coffee beans. All bird friendly coffee is Arabica at the moment and is at that specialty coffee grade, which means it hits a cupping score of at least 80 points. So it's a usually smoother, better tasting, richer, more robust, more complex coffee. And then your Robusta is going to be more of your kind of like gas station coffee. So that typically tends to be grown at lower elevations. It's sun grown often, and the quality kind of isn't quite there. So if you're drinking Robusta, usually you're drinking it for the caffeine, not necessarily for the taste. I mean, some folks may have a palate or a taste for it, but generally speaking, Robusta tends to be a little bit of like a lower quality coffee, and then Arabica tends to be a higher quality coffee.
Yeah, they were certainly growing Arabica coffee. Their top grades were all sun dried. They weren't using dryers for it. They spread it all over they had a big brick yard that they spread the coffee out and rotated every day to get it dried before they could ship it.
Oh, very nice. That's awesome.
Is there any difference in the number of pounds or whatever per acre between sun-grown and shade-grown?
Yes, so that is unfortunately why a lot of the coffee today is grown in that sun-grown monoculture. So you get a higher yield. So there's more coffee that can be produced per hectare if you're growing in full sun. The coffee just tends to grow faster. You tend to get more per area there than you do if you grow under that shade. And so that was kind of a big motivator for farmers to eliminate some of that shade habitat because they're trying to feed their families and make a living and do all of that. So when they realized that they could generate more coffee per acre per hectare if they went and switched to a sun-grown system, many of them, 3/4 of them globally, decided to eliminate that habitat from their farms.
You know how much more?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I would have to look
I'm
that
just thinking, if people are willing to pay $2 something per pound, well, does that equate to the difference in yield?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that would be one that would be a really interesting research question for us to look at, is to look more intricately at the yields that are produced in sun-grown systems versus bird-friendly shade-grown systems, and then look at sort of what's the value of being sold, what's the farmer's return on investment, and then also projecting ahead to future returns on investment if these numbers kind of go. But I love that idea for a research project, but that's a research question we haven't quite tackled yet.
Well, you've done a lot.
We're trying our best for a small but scrappy team.
For a small group, you've done quite a bit, yeah.
There's no shortage of really excellent research questions for us to ask. There's only a shortage of time and people.
I'm kind of going backwards here with the questions. I see you've got the website up there. Thank you. Nikki's asking, do you track coffee shops buying from bird-friendly roasters?
That's a good question. So yes, what we do is our roasters and I didn't get into this because it's a little bit of kind of like the nitty-gritty of how the program works, but we have reporting cycles that happen twice annually where we collect reports from our folks who are roasting and who are buying and roasting and kind of labeling their coffee as bird friendly. And what we do is collect information from them about the farms where they're buying their coffee from, the lot numbers, all sorts of things like that, as well as the volume that they are then going on to purchase and sell, whether that's through their own channels at their own roasteries, or whether they're selling to other partners like other coffee shops, or if they're white labeling and selling for like a few of our folks have relationships with like birding groups or Audubon societies where they sell their own custom, bird-friendly coffee for them. And so they send us kind of an aggregate report of all the bird-friendly that they sell in a 6-month period, or that they buy and then go on to sell in a 6-month period. And that's how we kind of calculate their royalty payment.
Okay, that answer your question, Nikki? She's muted there, so.
I have a question. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, if there were local coffee shops selling bird-friendly coffee, how would I know which ones they are?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the best thing that you can do is look for the bird friendly logo, because only the folks that are allowed to use that bird friendly logo, so that you know, kind of the text that says bird friendly has the Smithsonian sunburst on the bottom, only folks who have that logo on their package can we verify are actually buying from bird friendly certified farms, and are you know, are members of our program, and you know, have that agreement in place. If they don't have that logo, then we can't certify them. We can't verify that the coffee they're selling is bird friendly, even if they say it's good for birds, or it's coming from shade grown farms, or you know, it's organic, or they think it is. I've heard every answer in the book, honestly, in having conversations with folks. I'm like, oh yeah, I think we're involved in that. And I, you know, then I kind of say, well, it's my job to know if you're involved or not. And I can tell you right now, I don't think you are, because we don't have a licensing agreement with you, and I've never talked to you before. So yeah, usually the best thing to do is really look for the logo. That's going to verify and guarantee that the coffee that you're buying is certified as bird friendly.
I think what Nikki's getting at, though, is if you're going into a coffee shop, like, you know, to buy a cup of coffee, is there any way that you can verify that these people are actually selling you bird friendly?
Yeah, of course.
The only way is to ask them.
Yeah. So you can ask them many. So
They
one
can
of the
show
things
you the bag.
yeah, so one of the things that we provide to our roaster community is like window clings that actually can go on the front of their cafe that say proudly serving biodiversity or bird friendly certified coffee sold at this location. So you know, not everyone has them. You know, it's really just if folks want them, then they can have them. But I would say that pretty confidently, just about everyone in our program aggressively markets that their coffee is bird friendly. So it wouldn't be a surprise. Like, they have signage up, they've got the logo on display, even if you're just buying a cup of coffee, you know, they're talking about it, and you know, having that be, you know, something that's either even like in the name of the coffee. You know, if they've got a number of different roasts, it'll be, oh, can I get the bird friendly Guatemalan or the bird friendly Honduran roast, or something to that effect. But yeah, our folks, they're not shy about their involvement in the program.
Okay, I think that answers that one now. So yeah, people, I can see where people would have something slapped on their window or at their counter saying that they're selling bird friendly coffee, if in fact they actually are, and which coffees are the bird friendly ones. Joe's asking where you buy your coffee.
That's a great question. So I had been buying locally from Kent at Cafe. His coffee was really good. I actually just got back from a bird friendly, or excuse me, a coffee expo in Boston, where we had our bird friendly team there, and we were meeting and engaging and talking with a lot of folks. And a lot of folks brought me back coffee, like as a sample, so things like that. So I think in my cabinet now I've got about 14 pounds of coffee that I'm working my way through from.
And what's your address?
Coming over.
Yeah. If anyone wants to come over for a cup of coffee, I've got a whole lot of it here. But no, it's it was really really lovely and generous of our folks. It's a really wonderful community of roasters who we have in our program, who are just really excited about the work that we're doing, and you know, happy and proud to be part of a product that does really good things for conservation. And so yeah, they many of them kind of said, hey, do you want, you know, I brought some, you know, I don't want anything in return, but you know, if you want some coffee to, you know, take back or give away or what have you. And I gave away a whole heck of a lot of it at another conference I went to not long after. But at the end of the day, I was like, well, I guess I'm stocked for the next little bit here.
Okay, now Paul was asking, I think you covered this to a certain extent in your presentation. What are the main incentives for a farmer to seek bird-friendly certification?
Yeah, so a lot of our farmers are motivated just by the desire to protect habitat on their farm, and just sort of that intrinsic motivation that, you know, they want to be doing right by the land and by the wildlife. So a lot of folks, you know, see the value in that, and they're proud to be members of the bird friendly program, and kind of have that elite certification. So that is, you know, as we said, kind of like our gold standards in certification here when we talk about habitat conservation conservation and farming systems. So that's, you know, they get to be part of this kind of elite club, you know, when they kind of jump through and make sure that they're checking all the boxes for bird friendly certification. So it kind of gives them that status. It sets them apart from other farms that might be doing, you know, similar growing practices, things like that. So it gives them a little bit of a leg up as well as far as market access goes. So they can label their coffee, sell it as bird friendly to folks who are willing to pay more for it as well. So we, I want to say it's 2020, had a report from our importers that folks were tending to pay between 3 and 10 cents more per pound of bird friendly coffee as they were bringing it into country. So there's kind of the financial incentive there. We're working to try to find ways to make that financial incentive even better for farmers and make sure that that money is actually coming back to them, because they're doing the important and tough and hard work of keeping that habitat intact and providing that space for birds. And so that's one of the things that, you know, we're looking to improve as we grow our program is, you know, making sure that we're really rewarding the farmers who are doing that hard work. But yeah, as far as you know, motivations go, they also get things like, you know, the free pest control that the birds provide. They get you know, some of those other things like a more climate resilient farm by maintaining that shade habitat there for them. So they get lots of other sort of you know, auxiliary benefits as well, you know, the options for ecotourism, the additional products that can be, you know, grown and sold by maintaining those trees over the coffee crop. So lots of different reasons for them to, you know, to consider, you know, growing their coffee in this way and then becoming certified.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, here's a good question from Molly, also known as Valerie Fuller. Do any birds eat coffee beans?
That's a good question. To the best of my knowledge, birds eating coffee beans is not a concern. So I don't want to be so bold as to say that no birds eat coffee beans, because I don't know about every bird species in that great a detail, but it's never been kind of a concern that, oh, well, if we keep too many birds on this farm, then they're going to start eating our crop, and that's going to be a problem. I think as far as wildlife consuming coffee beans, it's the pests, the like insects and things like that are the bigger concern, and then the birds kind of come in and take care of those guys.
They don't need our stimulants.
Yes, they are not nearly as caffeine dependent as we are as primates.
I'm not sure whether you can answer this or not, but I'll ask this from Annie. She wants to know what BC available brands have the accreditation.
Yeah, so right now it's really just Kent at Cafe. He is the lone certified bird friendly roaster who's active in our program. We've had some other folks who have kind of come and gone through the years. So they're not currently active in the program. But Kent at Cafe, he is our lone BC certified roaster at the moment. If you find anyone else who's calling their coffee bird friendly and they're from BC, I would love to know about them so I can get in touch and formally bring them into the program.
Yeah. Okay, I think that pretty much covers questions on chat. Does anyone else have questions?
Yes, I do. Kirstin, a number of years ago, we had a young fellow as a speaker. He wasn't from any organization. He was a researcher, and he'd come back, I think, from Central America. Some of the others might remember him. He put forth a great argument, and it was the first time many of us had heard about this, between the forests and the big plantations. They cut down the forests and get this high yield from the plantations, and the effect that it had on the area and also on the people who had been working in the rainforest as pickers. They were losing their jobs, and the forest and the loss of the birds and all the other. And what he was highly recommending, and I've followed it ever since, is the Rainforest Alliance. And I was really surprised on your graph that it said it wasn't necessarily rainforest, that it wasn't necessarily in the shade. And so have I been misled all these years? How can I redeem myself?
No. Well, I would say, first of all, please don't feel that you've been misled or that you need to redeem yourself by any stretch. Not at all. Rainforest Alliance is a good option. It's not the best option, but it's a good option. They are also very much better known than we are. They're much more available. So if you have the opportunity to, to choose a coffee with no certification or to choose a coffee with rainforest, go with rainforest. That's what I do. If I'm out and I don't have access to Bird Friendly and I need a cup of coffee, I'll look for something that has something, because it's better than the alternative. It's better than nothing. So rainforest is, and if it was a few years ago, there's a very good chance that this gentleman just didn't know about Bird Friendly. Like I said, we've been pretty niche, pretty small, that not a lot of folks tend to know about us. And it may have just been that he was saying, this is the best thing that I'm aware of right now, which for many folks is Rainforest Alliance. It's the best option that you're aware of. But yeah, they occupy quite a different space than we do in coffee and sort of in food certifications in general. So they're much bigger than we are. They certify more farms. They have more products available. They're in more different spheres. So they've got vanilla, they've got chocolate, they've got coffee, they've got all sorts of different things that are are out there in their world. And we're pretty tiny compared to them. We're very small compared to them. They're a giant corporation. But yeah, unfortunately the name Rainforest Alliance is a little bit of a misnomer, at least within coffee. From what we know and from what our science is showing is that when we do a lit review of their coffee criteria, it doesn't have nearly the shade cover and the biodiversity habitat protection that the Bird Friendly standard does. So it's when we think good, better, best, it's better than nothing. But if you're looking for something that is truly that elite level for conservation on agroforestry systems, Bird Friendly is the way to go.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, does anyone else have more questions? I'm just thinking about how we can help to get the word out. And it occurred to me, when I had mentioned to a friend of mine, and she's the kind of person who will take a container into the supermarket so that she doesn't have to take their non-recyclable container home with her, and in plastic bags just don't live in her house. That's it. But when I mentioned Bird Friendly coffee, she wasn't aware of it. She said, "What on earth is Bird Friendly coffee?" And so I, gave her the little 2-minute version on Bird Friendly coffee. And I'm glad to see it's available at Wild Birds Unlimited, because I know she goes there because she brings me calendars from there. And she buys a lot of her birds food there. But she's also one of these people who's on all the social media stuff, which I'm not. And if I tell her, get the word out there, she'll do it, especially if I tell her that somewhere in Ladner that people can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll have to, Delta Nats will have to give some thought to this too. But apart from serving it at our meetings, which is basically going to be mostly our members who are already going to be aware, or many of them will be aware. But we'll have to see if we can get the word out a little bit more. I'm just checking to see if there are any. Oh, Jack is asking, do you have contact info for KFA?
I do. So I'm going to put 2 links in the chat. The first, this is a direct link to those toolkit resources that I mentioned in the talk. So as you're thinking and brainstorming of strategies for engagement, definitely highly encourage you to take a look at those, especially the education and outreach ones, which have some really nice messages and ways to get folks involved. And then in the retail operations are those templates that tell you sort of like, or give at least a form to start off with as you're asking folks to supply Bird Friendly coffee or letting them know about it. So encourage you to explore those. Let us know what you think. And if you have any questions, hopefully you have my contact info. You can let me know there. And then for KFA, linked there, I just put it in the chat there. That is his website where you can kind of explore his coffee and reach out to him if you're interested, or even just make a purchase as well. Those are all available through his website.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Any more questions from anyone? Okay, well, thank you very, very much, Kirstin. That was very enlightening, and your enthusiasm is great. You know, that's always nice to see people who are really enthusiastic about their presentations and what they're. Oh, people are clapping here, and I will do that too.
Well, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to have a chance to speak with everyone. Really do appreciate the chance to chat, and appreciate your enthusiasm for Bird Friendly and your questions, and you know, your support of what we're doing here. So yeah, it was great to connect, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other Bird Friendly questions for us.
Yeah, well, I'll be in touch with you anyway, because I don't think I got your address to send you a copy of that lovely